But yeah, Shlomi talked about cavalry with axes as well. That's definitely a possibility. But in terms of cavalry, um, Chinese faction, like judging from Three Kingdoms, right? From what I know from Three Kingdoms, they were most prominent in shock cavalry. Like they had all their, tiger infantry, cavalry, dragon, and jade dragons, and I don't know, red dragons, yellow dragons. They had a lot of different colored dragons. It's hard to
I would
remember
say
those names.
the units for Three Kingdoms tended to gravitate towards cavalry as the strongest units, I would say, which I think they need to be aware of. But also, if you go too much into the cavalry, you kind of step on the toes of someone like Alexander, right? If you just give them superior shock cavalry, then you might end up making another commander obsolete. So you probably need to be
Yeah,
a little tested a little harder, I would say.
that's a very good point because Alexander specializes in horses, and why take that away and give it to another faction? Maybe it's more in the vicinity of something that's unique to the Chinese faction. Like we had at the beginning, low tier units with the three factions. You have barbarians for horses, archers on Greece, and Romans for infantry. And then it kind of differs out. But what would be the specialization of Chinese units? That's the big question in my view.
Okay, so I disagree actually on that because we already have examples of, different, the same unit types being shared across factions. So for example, archers, right? We have archers both in Barbarian and Greek tree, and both of them are valid. They both have their advantages and disadvantages, and they have their niches, despite, both of them being essentially the same unit type. Just different commander, slightly different unit skills, and, well, you have two valid choices. Like, it's not like Kenane or Ambriorix archers are one vastly superior over the other. I mean, you can talk about meta, like Kenane is probably favored by tournament players. Then again, we also saw Barbarian archers featured in tournaments as well. Depends on the tier, really, and how the unit itself is strong on that tier rather than the commander itself as well. So yeah, it's out there. Same with a light infantry that is shared by Carthage and barbarians. Like, both are valid, and I don't think that introducing shock cavalry through China will take away that niche from Alexander. And we also have shock cavalry sort of in barbarian tree as well.
I mean,
I don't
most
think,
likely.
Okay,
Sorry.
Astolfo, go first.
Oh, I was gonna say, I don't think it takes away from it, unless you give them the same abilities, right? If you give them an ability similar to Hammer, that's when the shock cavalry will start feeling the same.
I mean, kind of cavalry does have to have a charge ability, but barbarians commanders don't have it, but then you have a unit ability.
Yeah.
I mean, cavalry without charge, like, come on, especially shock one. They have to have a
Yeah,
charge.
it needs to have a charge, but I don't know if you make it stronger, the same, or less than. Because if you make it stronger, then I mean, I guess you play Alexander for his hammer still, but or his anvil. But I don't know. I know it can go both ways. They definitely need to have shock cavalry because it's a huge part of the Three Kingdoms period.
I mean, in
But
terms of
I just
abilities,
don't know
you can look to like Hammer and Wrath of Mars, right? Also both similar abilities, but Wrath of Mars is longer, so it lasts for longer. I think it's like 5 seconds versus 4 seconds total. Although with the new talent tree that might have changed, and also my memory isn't as fresh about Arena anymore. But yeah, and also like Wrath of Mars is just better than Hammer, so kind of salty about that. CA, please balance. But yeah, they just give them a shock charge ability for commander that will come with that cavalry, and just balance it with the numbers. Like they can balance it later down the road as well. You have many balancing factors like cooldown, duration, and charge impact, charge damage. It could be something like Hasdrubal, which has much shorter cooldown, but the charge is weaker. so they could have much longer cooldown, but the charge would be much more powerful.
Obviously, Hasdrubal also has the double charge because his units have the charge as well.
Oh yeah, there's that feature. Like it doesn't make the cavalry unit ability obsolete. So yeah, there's also that. But yeah, you could have a Greek shock cavalry could be the cavalry that psycho charges, right? Because hammer is on a short cooldown, plus anvil, so you want to psycho charge and keep combining anvil and hammer, although anvil shouldn't be on Alexander, just saying. And then the Chinese faction could have a longer cooldown but more powerful charge. Well, okay, let's move on, and let's move on onto archers, unless anyone wants to add something about cavalry.
I mean, I just wanted to say that they found a way, obviously, to differentiate the cavalry already in the game. You know, they decided to differentiate the Carthaginians by giving them the javelins, the Numidian throw, which I thought was a clever way of distinguishing between the cavalry. And I think that they probably have something that they can differentiate the Chinese cavalry with. I mean, we've just sat here and theorized of how they might do that, but I think they'll definitely come up with some unique and interesting quirk too, even if they're not considered the meta, but still considered they do something unique that the other people struggle at or can't even do.
Yeah, one thing is being meta and being valuable on tournaments, and the other thing is also being valuable in random matches, right?
Yeah, being
For
fun as well.
the vast majority of players.